John, this conversation with Nicky Billou is just chocked packed with things that I've highlighted in my notes, and specifically loving this conversation around getting the mindset right, having bold messaging, and then charging the right amount for the solution you deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And the conversation with Nicky gets off to a really spirited start as we really talk about freedom of expression, freedom of enterprise, and what entrepreneurs should really be doing in this day and age with this highly politicized environment that we're living in, Rich. Just a really good spirited start to the conversation and leads us to a whole good ending as well.
And the entrepreneur just really getting themselves and their mindset out of the way to really get in the mindset of the customer on how to do that. So without any further delay, here's Nicky Billou. Hey, Nicky, welcome to the Entrepreneurs United podcast. We're happy to have you this morning.
It's an honor to be here with you. Thanks for having me on the show, gents.
Yeah, thank you. I want to dive right into the system that you have and how it benefits entrepreneurs. Can you just jump right in and talk to us about that? And then John and I are just going to pick away at a few questions and understand more about you and your journey and the system and what you do.
Sure. So first and foremost, my philosophy kind of is based on freedom. We are able to be successful when we stand up for freedom. So that's freedom, free expression, and free enterprise. And I look to work with people who believe in that ethos as strongly as I do, right? I'm actually originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. And when I was a young boy, 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran. And my late father, God rest his soul, he could see the writing on the wall. This wasn't going to be a great place for him to raise his Christian family. So eventually he got us out of Iran and settled us in Canada. And I thank God every day that he did that, because he took us out of tyranny and he brought us to freedom. I don't know if you gents have been following the news in Iran, but in the last few weeks, a young woman by the name of Mahsa Amini, just 22 years old and a flower of life, was outside with her hair partially uncovered. And in Iran, the law is if you're a woman, you cannot be outside with your hair or your skin showing. And so she was arrested and beaten to death for that crime. And since then, there have been demonstrations all over Iran. There have been really what many people are calling the second Iranian revolution. Young girls, teenage girls, women, and men have been protesting against this. And at the World Cup, the Iranian men's national soccer team refused to sing the Mullah's anthem, which took real courage because they could face death for not doing that. I mean, you think about that. You know, there's other athletes in other countries who have armbands that they put on, and as soon as the Qataris said, nope, we're going to give you a yellow card, they backed off of that. These men could die and have family members die to do that. So they showed real courage, and that's why I'm so grateful to live in freedom. And I know it's fashionable among certain folks these days to say, oh my God, the West, it's so oppressive, it's so racist, it's so sexist. And I push back hard against these kind of folks, and I go, are you kidding me? Of course it's not. This isn't a perfect place, but it's the most tolerant, wonderful, amazing set of societies in the history of the world. And anybody who falsely accuses us of anything else, I push back hard against those. And I want to encourage everybody to do that, because we're lucky that we have freedom. And it's freedom that gives us the ability to create a business, that gives us the ability to make that business come alive and be successful and be helpful. And my late father, he was an entrepreneur and he was an uplifter of men and women. And if he knew you and you were looking for a job, he'd help you get a job. If you were trying to start a business, he'd help you start a business. Even if you were going to compete with him, he didn't care about that. He just wanted to help people. And if you worked for him and you're looking at a car or a house or an apartment and you didn't have enough money, Dad would take care of you and make sure you could buy that car, that house, or that apartment. And you might ask yourself, who does that sort of thing? It sounds like a fairy tale. Well, the late, great Napoleon Billou, for one. And why? Well, he was a Christian. He believed he'd been blessed by God, and it was his duty to share those blessings with others. Secondly, he did it because he was successful, and he could help people. I wanted to be like Dad. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to help people. And I remember Dad telling me, business isn't about money or numbers, son. It's about people. That person in front of you, that's someone's husband, that's someone's father, that's someone's son, that's someone's mother, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's wife, right? Your job is to help them. That's why they're there in front of you. You're here to help them. And you know, the great American poetess Maya Angelou, in one of her famous poems, said, people will forget what you said to them. People will forget what you did with them, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So I just like, that's the first philosophy that we come from, is treat people with love and kindness, care for them, show them compassion, show them concern. And that's what it's all about. You got to be all about helping people. What is business? Business is about helping people solve problems for profit. People, problems, profit. That's all it is. Good people who have acute problems, and you make a wonderful profit solving those problems for them. That's your job as a business person. So if you're asking me what is my system all about, it's about that. It's about helping people and solving problems for them. Now, a lot of folks get into business. This is what I've seen, and their mindset's all wrong. And I kind of see myself like an awesome coach. See myself like a John Wooden type fella. And my job, first and foremost, is to help people get their mind right, right? Because a coach's job is to help people get their mind right first. And then once they get their mind right, you give them the right tactics and strategies to use. And if they get their mind right, the tactics and strategies almost don't matter. Now, obviously, good tactics and strategies are better than terrible ones, right? But you get your mind right, and you're in the bonus round. You're going to be great. So we really want to help folks in business. And there's many business people who are just scared of business, scared of selling in particular. They look at selling as something bad or wrong. They don't want to be seen as a pushy, slimy salesperson reeking of commission breath whenever they come near you. You're going to buy, you're going to buy, you're going to buy. They hate that. And that's the wrong way to look at it from my perspective. It's a way that keeps you back, because then you won't go after business you should be going after, and you won't make the money you should. And these customers who could use your help, they don't get to be helped by you. And so they lose out on having a problem solved for them by a good, caring human being. And then some charlatan marketer, some quasi sociopath who couldn't care less and just wants the money, but is really good at selling, will get the business and deliver nothing. So that reduces the sum total of goodness in the world. So I help folks rewire their brains to look at sales as service, because to me, sales is service. Nobody wants to be sold. You don't want to be sold. I don't want to be sold, but you all want to be served by a good, caring human being. So that's the second part, is we help people get their mind right, especially around the issue of sales and service, and coming from that point of view. And when people start to come from that point of view, it makes it easier for them to connect with human beings. And then, that's one of the ways in which you can stand out. You can stand out by being known as a caring, good human being. And you do need to stand out. You do need a great message out in business, because if your message is a Mayo message and you try to be all things to all people, you're done. It's not going to work out for you. And that really is an important thing for a lot of people to understand. And they don't. Their messaging stinks. That's a technical term. Their messaging is just horrible. They say things like, you ask them what they do. Well, I'm a realtor. I'm a software company. I'm a mortgage broker. I'm a coach. They say things which don't really speak to the problems people are dealing with. And then when people ask them the same, well, I've been in business for 10 years. I do this and I do that. And people's eyes glaze over, because nobody wants to hear that. They want to know how you can help them. It's much better, instead of saying I'm an executive coach, say something like what I say to folks, which is, I help service-based entrepreneurs add 1 to 2 zeros to their income while working 10 to 20 hours less a week. Now, if you're a business owner, that's going to at least get you intrigued enough to go, I wonder how he does that, right? Like adding a 0 or 2 to your business and working less sounds pretty good to almost every entrepreneur on the planet, right? And that's the type of message you want to have. You want to have a message that speaks to the kinds of problems people are really facing. And you don't want to have a message that's all about you and what you do, because nobody really cares. So that's first and foremost.
Excellent philosophy. And what a hot opening. There are so many places where we could dig to get value from here. Uh, I feel compelled to ask in the first place, you said your late father. What's your father's name? I'd like him to be honored by name.
Napoleon.
Napoleon. And it sounds like Napoleon was quite an influence on you with his philosophy of helping people and specifically helping entrepreneurs.
Yeah, he was. He was a good human being, the greatest man I ever knew. And I'm really grateful to have had him in my life.
Yeah, that's excellent. That comes through. You had said when you started on freedom, you said three things. I think it was freedom, free expression, and free enterprise. Did I miss one of those, or was it those
No, that's
three?
great. That's exactly it. Freedom, free expression, free enterprise.
Yeah, and that as just your first opening line. I mean, just there's an immediate magnetic attraction to you. I mean, who doesn't want that? Whether you're in a free society or an oppressed society, who's going to say, "Yeah, I'm not about what Nicky's about. Nicky's about freedom and free expression and free enterprise." I think that guy's on the wrong track. Nobody's going to say that, right? So, well. I absolutely love that as a kind of a mantra, as an opening for you. I'd love for you to expand on that and how that relates to entrepreneurs today as you see it.
Well, we get a little bit philosophical here, but we're living in a time that I believe there's dark, evil forces that have penetrated Western society and are trying to take a lot of these freedoms away. Under the guise of tolerance, there's folks who are just saying, no, you can't say that. You offended somebody. You're a racist. You're a sexist. You're whatever if you say those things. And they're using those as cudgels to shut good people up. And those are actually fascist tactics. They were used by the brown shirts in Germany when Hitler took power. They were used by Mussolini in the 20s when the fascists took power in Italy. They would go shut down their opponents. And then they had these literal kind of masked street thugs, similar to Antifa in the United States, that would go and literally beat up anybody who disagreed with them, right? And that's the sort of thing that is happening even in the United States, which I consider to be a citadel of freedom. And in my opinion, folks need to understand this, and they need to push back hard against this. If they stay scared, going, well, I hope they don't come after me, eventually they are going to come after you. Don't kid yourself. They're after shutting down everybody. They're after creating a whole new world, a whole new type of society. And to me, the fight today in America isn't between left or right or Democrat or Republican. It's between the people who believe in a traditional view of freedom and the people who want to shut all that down. And the ones who believe in a traditional view of freedom are in the majority, in the overwhelming majority. The problem is many of them are afraid, and they don't want to speak up. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to. They don't want to be in the crosshairs of the bad guys. Unfortunately, if you don't step up, the bad guys are eventually going to be able to take it all away from us. And to me, that's super, super dangerous. So I think every human being that lives in a free society, first and foremost, needs to make sure that they are ready to speak up against this sort of thing and ready to speak up against it forcefully and be willing to be called, these false things, and push back and say, I'm not those things. And, you are those things because you're trying to shut people up who disagree with you. And that's all there is to it.
You ground this for me. What does the expression of freedom look like as an entrepreneur? I understand what you just said. It sounds, I relate with it. Hey, put yourself out there, express yourself. Don't worry about being judged or repercussions, and the freedom of expression and communication. Got it. Ground this into, if I'm an entrepreneur who's listening to what you're saying, like, what is an example of the expression of freedom that an entrepreneur would do?
Well, inside of your civic life, you would do the types of things that I was just talking about now. You would get involved in the political process. You would, support candidates that supported what you said. You would give them money. You'd go out there and encourage people. There was a time where business men and women were very much involved in the political process, not just by donating money, but by actually being part of the conversation. There's reasons why that's not the case as much anymore, but that's a whole different conversation for another time. So that's the number one thing you can do as an entrepreneur. For the first time in Canada, I got involved in the political process beyond voting. I joined the Conservative Party in Canada. I looked at all the candidates that were running for leadership. There was one of them that spoke to me more than any of the others. His name's Pierre Poilievre. And thankfully, he ended up winning the leadership of the Conservative Party. I donated money to his campaign. I called people, persuaded them to vote for him. All that sort of thing as an entrepreneur you can do. But when it comes to actually using free expression in your business, well, you need to have a bold messaging inside your business and not wishy-washy messaging. In my business, I tell people I help them add 1 to 2 zeros to their income while working 10 to 20 hours less a week. I also tell people I work with freedom-minded business owners. I don't work with business owners who are not freedom-minded. I don't work with business owners who want to shut people up who disagree with them. I just won't do it. I don't care how much money they have. It doesn't matter to me. And I actively go out there and put my values at the center of what I do in business. I also put my values at the center of what I do in business in terms of being a heart-driven person, wanting to work with people who are, leading from the heart. So those are things as an entrepreneur you can do. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a deep set of values, your business should be a reflection of those values, right? For example, if you're a Christian entrepreneur and you're maybe, looking to get some coaching on how to grow your business, and you've got coaches that are trying to tell you to, compromise your values, you probably shouldn't work with those coaches. You know what I'm saying? You probably should go work with some Christian coaches who are not going to tell you to compromise your values and going to tell you double down on them.
So
that
Nicky,
is a start of expressing yourself as an entrepreneur freely through business.
Nicky, I want to jump in here and bring a little bit of personal aspect to this from myself. I think there's a lot to be learned and talked about here. I love what you just said, which is I want to work with people that have values alignment to my values. If they don't align with my values, I don't want to work with them. However, I do feel, and by the way, I'm a Canadian living in the United States. I do not vote because I'm not a citizen. I'm still a citizen of Canada, so I do not vote. And I sit on the sidelines and I watch and I listen. And it's amazing to me how passionately the people on one side feel that their values are right, and how passionately the people on the other side feel their values are right. And so, as an entrepreneur myself, in working with entrepreneurs, this may be very wrong, and I'd love for you to tell me it maybe is not correct, but I've taken the path of I'm going to draw the middle line. Yes, values are one thing: lying, cheating, stealing. Tell me I can't. That's one thing. But for an entrepreneur to pick a side in a 50-50 world that we live in is potentially catastrophic from nature. I know families that have gotten divorced over political conversations, let alone lose customers. Why is it in the best interest of an entrepreneur to pick a side politically versus
I didn't say pick
values?
a side politically.
Okay.
I didn't say pick a side politically.
Okay, but you did say that. I think you said.
I said that you should stand up for the values that you believe strongly in.
Yes.
And
okay.
If there's
Maybe
people that are going to do business with you, and those values misalign with yours, then you shouldn't do business with you. I frankly would love to see many big companies stop picking political sides, but just reflect basic values. Basic values like free expression, like tolerance, like Disney, as an example, decided to get involved in the culture wars, and they went away from having family-friendly programming to putting programming that sexualizes children into their programming. Look, I've got kids. I've got nieces and nephews that are under the age of 10. I don't think they should know anything about sex, sexual relations, how people have sex. I don't want to see that in the cartoons that those kids watch. I don't think that's a left or right issue as much as it is, a values issue from my perspective. So I stopped doing business with Disney, and now Disney fired their CEO, and it looks like they're going to do something different to turn those things around. I'm not telling you to go say I'm on this side or I'm on that side, but I am telling you that if you have values and you're trying to thread the needle and not talk about your values, you're making a mistake. Because
Understood.
eventually in today's environment, you're going to be forced to choose. You're not going to have a choice. There's going to be people that are going to come down towards you and they're going to say, I demand that you say yes to my values. And you should only say yes to those values if you actually share them.
Absolutely. And we have 100% alignment on the values point. You should only work with people that align to the values of your company. Your customers should align to your values as an organization. The question that I'm posing maybe is a little bit different. Richard asked you, what should an entrepreneur do as it relates to freedom of expression? And I believe one of the things you had mentioned was you should potentially, put your money where your mouth is and back a political side or candidate that you believe in. I'm suggesting that could be dangerous as an entrepreneur to do that outwardly. That hey, like, for example, within an organization that I'm involved with, there's 100 plus employees. If I outwardly, or the CEO of that company outwardly said, we're going to back this side politically and financially as an entrepreneur, there could be half of that company that would want to quit because they're so disgruntled, and it's such a dirty thing right now if you're on the other side in America for whatever reason, right? That's been caused. So I guess my question more is, as an entrepreneur, what should the entrepreneur do? I heard you say, one of the things as an example is back the side that you believe is aligned with your values, and I'm wondering if that's the suggestion, or that's something you're just doing personally. Is that something you outwardly promote?
Listen, man, I'm a high DII in the disc profile. I don't do suggestions. All right.
Okay.
You can do whatever you want. You're a free man, and other people listening to this are free men and women, and they can make whatever choices. But I don't give suggestions. I tell people what I think they ought to do, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do.
Perfect.
That's how I roll. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is 2022. This is not 1972. Your advice, I think, would have been great in 1972, 100%. I wouldn't get involved in a lot of politics. But in this day and age, if you have views, if you believe, as I believe, that society right now is under attack, that there are dark forces that are trying to take our freedoms away, and you decide, well, I'm going to sit back because I don't want to upset some of my employees, or I don't want to upset some of my customers, you're not going to have that choice for too long. They're going to come for you. They're going to ask you to take a side, and they're going to pressure you to take their side. And if you're going to take a side, you may as well take a side that you believe in, not a side that someone's trying to force down your throat, which is what happened with Disney. Bob Chapek, the CEO of that organization, I don't know what he believes in or doesn't believe in, but there was a massive backlash on the part of some of his employee base and on the part of some folks on social media. So he decided to take Disney, which had a 90-year-long history as a family-friendly company that created wholesome programming for children, and decided to ditch all that and say, okay, we're going to have sexualized programming for kids. Now, that maybe wasn't the best idea in the world from his perspective and from the perspective of Disney, because Disney lost tens of millions of customers over that. People stopped going to Disney World at the same level that they did. And they got into a pissing match in Florida with the governor over there. And the governor decided to take away this self-governing status that Disney World had that was worth several $100 million a year to Disney. So, like it or not, they're coming for you. And I'm being straight with you. If you're telling me you want to keep your views to yourself and never have anything to do with it, good luck. Good luck. I don't think that's possible anymore. That's my opinion.
Well, you know what's interesting? What's interesting in that example is that CEO of Disney did pick a side.
He did, eventually.
And the side was one that was unpopular with many people, and the entrepreneur at Disney, if we still want to call that entrepreneurial, although it's relatively proven and less entrepreneurial, but sure. There were the repercussions that John is suggesting, because that entrepreneur did pick a side, which almost exemplifies the risk sometimes of picking a side. But I think what I hear you saying, Nicky, is yes, there's risk. Yes, you may lose money. You may also make money. You don't know. But if you're clear about your values and what you believe in, go declare them and let the world judge as it will. Well, this particular CEO did that, which part of whatever the value set is included what you're describing as sexualizing children. uh, that CEO certainly did pick a side, and there were repercussions. And it's just interesting now in that story as you're describing it, and you know more about it far more than what I do, that Disney now as a corporation is going to walk that decision back.
Disney was founded by Walt Disney and his brother Roy back in the day, and they were believers in wholesome family entertainment. That was their vision. They were going to create that. Um, their customer base tend to be families with children, right? Children under the age of 13, right? Disney's decision to get involved in a set of values went against the values of the overwhelming majority of their customer base. So this new CEO, who wasn't an entrepreneur, and I think you're exactly right, he's not an entrepreneur. The company is an established company, went against the values of their founding entrepreneur and of their massive customer base. If you're an entrepreneur, you're not in Disney's position, you have a choice to make. What kind of business do you want to run? Do you want to be a completely apolitical business? You have a right to do that. Absolutely. 100%. If you want to not get involved in the corporate culture wars, probably a smart idea at a lot of levels. But all I'm saying to you is once you get to a certain size in this day and age, there's a lot of people that are out there that are trying to get corporations to back a particular side. And if you're going to back that particular side, back it because you honestly believe in what they have to say and be willing to do it for those reasons rather than doing it because you're scared and doing it because you think you have to do it.
We're probably too far down the rabbit hole of Disney, and I want to pull us back out in a moment. But as you were talking, and I was thinking about what you were saying. The yes, that CEO picked a side. What's interesting is whoever put that CEO in place, presumably a board or a chairperson, it's possible that person wasn't clear on what their values were, which was what allowed them to select that CEO who had different values than what the 90-year history of the organization had. So it actually does beget your point, Nicky, on clarity of values. If the board or chairperson who put that CEO in place had clarity of values and were going to stand up for it, and the values were more about the legacy of the company and people and less about money and numbers, it's possible the CEO who made that decision would never have been put in place because they clearly weren't put in place to extend the 90-year legacy of the company. It wasn't based on alignment with those values.
No, it wasn't. And that's part of what caused troubles for that organization. But I mean, Disney's case is a microcosm of what's going on in corporate America right now. There's a lot of organizations that are taking sides, if you will, in the corporate culture wars, not necessarily based on alignment with that organization's values or even their own personal values, but because they think they have to. And my point is, you live in a free society, you want to have it continue to be free, stand up for freedom and stand up for the values you hold most dear, and don't let people push you around.
Love it. Nicky, I'm going to change this because I want to put some zeros on my number and work 10 to 20 hours less a week. However, before I do, I just want to say I love healthy conversation on this subject because way too many people are sitting on the sidelines watching TV, wondering what they should be doing about it, specifically entrepreneurs. And even in this example, we have two different examples of how you're approaching it, maybe how I approach it a little bit differently. And to the point you're making, to each their own. At the end of the day, one thing we can absolutely align on is freedom of expression and freedom of enterprise is at the core of what drives entrepreneurism, drives capitalism, drives what we want to get here. And so if I'm an entrepreneur listening, that's going, okay, guys, great conversation. Now show me how to put zeros on the bottom of my check, at the end of my number. Can you boil it down? You talked a little bit about mindset. 100% performance mindset has to be gelled in. You talked about messaging. You talked about values alignment. But is there a special recipe, a special sauce? I think you have $1 million system that you kind of talk to a lot in your systems. Can you boil it down to what are the key components of adding zeros?
Well, get your mind right. Make it about people, not about money. I think that's super important. Have a really strong, powerful message that has people want to come and work with you. And then charge based on the value of the solution you deliver. There's a lot of people who are undercharging out there in the marketplace right now. They're charging based on what they think the market will bear, not what really people are ready to pay based on getting a particular solution. So let me give you an example of that of a client I work with who owned a clinic in Manhattan.
Okay.
Now this guy had a beautiful business and he made 6 figures of profit. Okay. In Manhattan, 6 figures of profit's not very much. Right? I mean, it's an expensive place to live in and all that jazz. So when he met me, he was telling me, look, I need to tenfold my business at least just to feel like I got a good business going over here. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. And I looked at his business. He had really good messaging in his clinic. He really helped solve some very particular health problems. He had A-list clients, like folks like Robert De Niro were his client, right? I mean, a lot of great clients, and great location. All that jazz was great. There's only one thing wrong in his business. He didn't charge nearly enough for what he did, and I just looked at it and I'm like, wait a minute, Robert De Niro pays this much to come and see you? And I was just like laughing. I go, really? And he's like, I didn't think he'd pay this little to do anything. And the guy laughed. And I said, look, you got to raise your fees. You're not charging based on the value of what you offer people. And I think he thought I was going to say, raise my fees 10 or 20%. So he said, okay, how much should I raise my fees? I said, I think you need to 20-fold your fees. And he just like, what? He almost hyperventilated. He couldn't believe it. He says, I can't 20-fold my fees. No one's going to pay that. You ever heard anybody say that? No one's going to pay that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I kind of said, if you have that belief, and you're right, no one's going to pay that. But, the belief that I encourage you to take on is that I'm solving a problem for people, a health problem. And based on the value of solving that health problem, this is the right price. And I kind of got him around to my way of thinking, but he wouldn't 20-fold the fees. He'd 7-folded them. So, folks, he did nothing different in his business except 7-fold his fees. I want you to understand this, right? Within 4 months, he made 7 figures in profit. Now, not annualized. I'm talking he made 7 figures in profit in 4 months. He over 20-folded the size of his clientele. Why? Well, now folks like Robert De Niro would go, look, I go to the best clinic in Manhattan. Look at how much they charge. That's how come they brought all their friends in. And that alone took this fellow up over 10-fold in terms of his price. And you may be thinking, okay, is it simple? I got to raise my price? Well, no, it's not just, add a zero at the end of your price or something like that. You need to really own it, embrace it, understand it. You need to be able to sell it to yourself and sell it to your clients. But once you do that, that's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. The vast majority of the clients I've been able to help get to, mid 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, did it because their mindset shifted, their messaging shifted, and their pricing shifted. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I want to circle back around to see if you could decouple something for me. I love that order. Get the mind right, get the messaging right, and get your pricing right. Beautiful. On the get the mind right, your subtext is it's about people, not money. And in number 3, the example that you gave, it was about money. So can you decouple those for me on...
That's a great question.
At what point is it about money and at what point is it about people? Because your story was actually about money.
Well, no. It may seem like that on the surface, but I'll give you an example. Okay. I had a client who, this fellow right now is in his early 70s, but at the time he was in his early 60s. And he had been, he'd been a man who'd worked inside of business, but on the side, he was part of men's groups. So for 30 years, like, he went through a hard divorce. He took the courses. He taught a bunch of courses. He had helped hundreds of men dealing with relationship breakup, relationship issues, things like that. And when I tell you he's world class at helping men deal with these types of issues, I mean world class. Like, you would hang on it. If you're having the slightest amount of problem with your wife, you just call me and say, Nicky, I'm having some problems with my wife, and I'll put you in touch with him, and he'll fix you up that fast. That's how good he is. And you'll have your wife in love with you just like in the early days you were courting. That's how good he is. Okay.
Sorry, what's his number again?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, his name's Steve. Okay. So, when I met Steve, Steve was new to doing this as a business. He'd been doing it as a volunteer, right? But he kind of retired from his regular business, and he wanted to do this as a business. And he had like 5 or 6 people that had paid him money. It was very awkward for him to ask for money. And he was also frustrated that he wasn't getting results with his clients. Okay. And I want you to pay attention to what I just said. He wasn't getting results with his clients. He got great results in the free work that he did with people when they were volunteers, but not with his clients. So I looked at his business and I thought, okay, you got a good message. You help people like save their marriages. And, you got a few clients, not as many as you want. What's the problem? I said, what do you charge these guys? And he goes, oh, I charge them like whatever they can pay, but usually like $90 for a 2-hour session. I'm like, hold on. You're charging $90 for a 2-hour session to save marriages? What's the average amount of the net worth of these folks? He said, oh, they're all worth at least a couple $1,000,000. So you're saving them half of that, and you're charging them $90. You ever heard of something called expectancy bias? So let me just, for your listeners' sake, talk about expectancy bias and why, when you said, Nicky, this is about money, and I say, no, it's not about money. It's actually about the client. People expect to get what they pay for. If you buy a pendant at Tiffany's and you buy that same pendant on a street corner, and at Tiffany's it's $10,000, on the street corner it's $20, you are going to value that $10,000 pendant way more than you're going to value that $20 pendant you bought at the state. They could look exactly the same. You with me? Exactly the same. I bought this at Tiffany's. Look at it. It's $10,000. And there's a value people get. And when someone hires you to help them with a problem, right? If they underpay for it, they're not going to get the outcome. If they underpay for it, they're not going to value it. I have a men's group I run, and it's not run, for me to make money at it. I charge the folks that are in there. I charge $50 a month or $500 a year. I've had half the men quit within 2 months. Why? They're not paying enough for it to really matter to them. Now, there's a bunch of men that are broke, that are paying that $50 a month and barely paying it every month. These guys show up. They're at the edge of their seats. They're taking notes. They're doing the work. Their lives are getting better. Because to them, that's a lot of money. You with me? And they expect to get their money's worth. I would give everything I have to people for free if it would work and they would get the value that they have coming to them. The problem is when they don't pay enough, they don't value it enough, and they don't get their outcome. The reason I asked this fellow to grow his business wasn't just so he would make more money. It was so that his clients would be getting the full value of what he offered them, because they showed up saying, okay, I'm paying this much money. I'm going to do what the guy tells me. I'm going to follow the whole protocol. So if you undercharge your clients, you're hurting them.
Nicky, your explanation of that connects really well with me. And I've heard people have to have skin in the game. It's kind of a mantra, right? Or even Anthony Robbins, upon being asked by an interviewer why he charges so much for his sessions, hasn't he made enough money? And I'll summarize what he said. I'm sure I'll get the words wrong, but it was essentially, I charge so much because that's how it'll connect with them. I do it because I'm serving them. And, at the time I heard that, I'm like, that's kind of a BS answer. Like, what a slick way to say I'm going to make a lot of money off of you is I'm serving you by charging you a bunch. But really, the way, Nicky, you broke that down on the expectancy bias. And at the end of the day, if we have the mindset that we're serving customers, we're serving the people by solving their problems, you can give all the advice you want or all the service you want. But if it doesn't connect with the individual deeply, it's lost. So the way you describe that on how it really gets it to connect with the individual you're trying to serve deeply, and that really is in service of them, this may be one of the first times that it's connected as well for me, and I'm grateful for that.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm assuming, Nicky, you know, a lot of this, even when you talk about messaging, even when you're talking about charging the right amount, I love the fact that number one is mindset, because part of the reason they don't charge enough is, well, my clients is not, it's the confidence, it's the mindset of what you're creating. Talk to me about how you work with entrepreneurs in that area. Is that one-on-one coaching that you do? Is it in group setting? Is it how do you assist entrepreneurs with their mindset?
I don't do a lot of one-on-one anymore. Kind of like Tony Robbins. If someone wants to work with me one-on-one, I charge them a lot because I want to make sure they're going to really do the work, and I want to make sure I got somebody. I get a lot of juice when people do the work. When they don't, I don't. So usually it's in group. But I'll tell you the number one reason why people's mindset is bad is because they're putting all the attention on themselves.
Tell me more.
They're thinking about, I wonder if they're going to like me. I wonder if they're going to pay what I'm asking. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to like my program? Are they going to think I'm amazing? Or are they going to hate me? What's going on in their head is all about them. And one of the key things that I think people miss, and I help them see in the work I do with them, be it one-on-one or in the group setting, is take all that attention off of you and put it on the person that's sitting in front of you. It doesn't matter whether they like you or, whether they like your mustache, whether they like the fact that you're growing a beard like I am right now. None of that matters. What matters is, what are they dealing with? What's the effect of this problem they have on their self-confidence? What's the effect on their finances? What's the effect on their health and stress levels? What's the effect on their relationships? And your job is to just be curious about that. If I can work with somebody to help them take the attention off themselves and put the attention on the other person, honestly, that's like over 50% of the mindset work right there.
Love that.
And I can tell people this till I'm blue in the face. For whatever reason, it takes time for it to really sink in.
Yeah, but it's a
reason.
great and easy way. Even if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and one of your employees is coming in and talking to you about something, you just tell their mindset is more about how I feel about it versus the client or the customer, and that shift is a very easy. When you say it's 50% of the issues dealing with mindset, when you think about it, that resonates really well with me. That a lot of times I'm working with, whether it be athletes or entrepreneurs, and mindset, a lot of it is just self-induced pressures or things that are going on in their minds. So I really appreciate you giving us that little one thing. If it's 50%, that covers a lot of mindset that a lot of us may be dealing with personally, or with people we work with. I need to ask about powerful message, because we talked about, Rich asked you a fantastic question. We got the expectancy bias on the financial piece and what you're charging. You just gave a real big key on mindset. If we don't ask about powerful message, I feel like we're missing a big key of this conversation. What is the one big nugget on making sure you have a powerful message?
It comes back to what I was just saying again. Your message can't be about you. Your message has to be about them. People don't buy their way into something. People buy their way out of something. Nobody is buying your program, your product. They're buying their way out of perceived pain or perceived problem. So no one's coming to join your mastermind because your mastermind's so great. They're coming to join your mastermind because They want to make more money for their business because they're struggling. They want to grow their network by the members of the mastermind. That's the reason they're joining your mastermind. It's not because your mastermind's so great. It's because their pain is so acute. People don't buy their way into something, they buy their way out of something. So if you want to have a powerful message, you really need to make sure your message takes that phrase into account. Because if it doesn't, then it's not going to be powerful. If it's all about you, your program, how great it is, how long you've been in business, if you go drive down the freeway, you're going to see all kinds of signs for realtors, right? You know what I'm talking about. All kinds of signs.
Yep.
There's a big picture of the realtor with their name emblazoned in there. #1 for 6 years in a row. In business for 35 years. I'm like, oh my God, what a waste of money and time. What a waste of money and time. Like, I'm not going to look at any of those and go, yeah, I got to hire that gal. I got to hire that guy. I'm not. Now imagine if instead of that, they said, need to sell your home in this crazy market, need to make sure you get top dollar. Let us show you how. Now, if I was someone who needed to sell my home and needed to get top dollar, I'd call that person.
So, great example on the bold messaging should be crafted in a way that someone can self-identify. That in that message, someone can say, that's me. I have that problem. I have that pain point. I have that need. And in the example you just gave there, which by the way, you're fantastic at giving examples to ground the reality of some of the philosophy that you're sharing. In the example that you gave there, you didn't even talk about what the solution is. It didn't say, we put things on the market first. We're the most responsive. We're really going to take care of who the buyer is so they see the value in it. It didn't even say any of that. Straight up what you said was only something where the potential customer of that realtor could self-identify under the assumption that that realtor has the solutions without even talking about what the solutions are or how good they are at it.
You haven't earned the right to share the solution with somebody at that stage. You haven't earned the right. And if you share the solution with someone too soon, they're going to start judging the solution. They're going to start judging it. And with all respect to your client, they're in no position to judge the solution. Zero. It's not what they do for a living. They don't know how solutions work. They just think they know. If I break my arm, and I'm not looking for a broken arm. Thank you very much. Right? But I'm not going to go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, tell me how you're going to set my arm. Come on. Give it to me, doc. No, before I let you do anything, tell me how you're going to set my arm. No,
what's
set
the
my
process?
arm. Please, set it right away.
Right.
You are a doctor. You're not in the business of explaining your solutions with people. You're in the business of diagnosing problems. And once you diagnose the problem, then, and the clients become clear that you've diagnosed the problem. Well, then you can go, okay, I know how to fix it. This is how I fix it. But if a client gets into looking at what your solution is before they're clear that you understand the problem, they are immediately going to start evaluating the solution. Yeah, I've tried that. It doesn't work, whatever. Some version of that. And it may even be true that they, quote unquote, tried that, but they didn't try it with someone like you who knows what they're doing. So don't put them in a position where their lack of knowledge and expertise and their kind of ego takes over and doesn't allow them to understand the reality of the consequences of what they're dealing with. So they don't do anything about it. One of my mentors said to me something brilliant many years ago. He said, an undisturbed prospect will not buy. What does that mean? Well, if a prospect thinks their situation is okay the way it is, they're not going to buy a solution to it. You got to disturb them enough so they're clear. Oh my God, I got a broken arm. I got a broken arm. Oh, no, I can't have a broken arm. Let's fix the broken arm instead of, it's not so bad. I'll put a Band-Aid on it. I know that sounds a little silly, but that's how most people deal with most of the problems they have. That's how
Hold on.
most people deal with most of the problems they have. Oh, I'll put a Band-Aid on that broken leg, that broken arm.
You said one thing earlier in the conversation that I'd be remiss if before we closed I didn't touch back on. I would love to get your nugget or two on this concept of sales is service. And I think you absolutely nailed it that the majority of people identify sales as something dirty, as something that they don't want to do, as something that is judged as being done to people instead of with people. How do you work with your customers, your clients, on breaking them of that mindset to understand that sales is service?
It once again comes back to putting the attention on yourself rather than on your customer. Because if you are thinking about the sale and what it means to you and your bank account, then that's when all those kind of slimy, icky feelings start to come out, and the customer can pick up on those, and they're going to feel a little bit icky. Oh, this person needs the sale. They want the sale really badly. Well, if you put the attention on them and what they're dealing with, you're only going to offer something to somebody if you're truly the best person to help them. And if you're not, you won't. And this may sound strange to someone who's listening to this. They go, no, whatever you're in front of a customer, you should make an offer. No, you shouldn't. There are people that you have no business making an offer to. No business. In the last week, I've had a number of conversations with a number of folks. There's one person that I just chose not to make an offer to yesterday. This person had the money, they had the need, they had the pain, but they were trying to act like their pain wasn't really a pain, and they were doing great. They're making $400,000 a year, but they've been stuck at that level for 3 years in a row. And they're trying to say, "Well, I'm actually doing really well." And I was trying to say, "Well, if you're actually doing really well, then why are we talking?" And they weren't going to let that go. There was nothing I could do to get them to let it go. So I ended the call. I was polite about it. I answered a few other questions. And I said, "Look, we're never going to get anywhere until you realize this is a real issue and your mindset's what's getting in the way. If you get to that point, feel free to reach back out to me." I don't expect they will. Tell you the truth, I expect they're going to suffer for another couple of years at this level. I didn't make them an offer. And some people would go, "Why? They got the money. They could have paid you. You could have gotten a check." Oh,
But you didn't make an offer because you didn't feel you'd be able to serve them. Because until they realize the pain that they were really coming to seek your consultation to solve, they weren't going to endure the pain of changing. Because the pain of changing would exceed the pain of their current situation. And I think that's a brilliant nugget to end on that you've given us. And this has been chock full of nuggets. It's one of the episodes I'm definitely going to listen to again to double check my notes. So thank you, Nicky.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's been an honor to be here, and thanks for a spirited discussion. It was great.
If before we hop off, if our listeners want to get more of you and want to get a hold of you, what's the way that you'd like them to do that?
Okay, so anywhere on social media, Nicky Billou, NICKY BILLOU. Just go on most platforms. You'll be able to find me if you want to connect and say, "Hey, I heard you on the show," and that's great on Entrepreneurs United. But if you're a business owner and you're a little stuck and you want to have a more substantive conversation than just I want to connect with you on social media, I do offer something called a success coaching call. It's a complimentary 45-minute conversation where we take a look at where you are, why you're stuck, where you want to get to, and what it's going to take to get you unstuck. And we'll put a blueprint together for you. And I want to say this, it is complimentary, and there's no bait and switch. There's no, come on, and I'll try and sell you something. I will not do that. I will tell you straight up that I do this because I want to expand my network and offer value to people. And out of doing that, that's how I grow my business. And any smart business businessman or businesswoman would realize that. And some of the people I end up talking to will end up doing business with me. So I want to be straight up about that. But there's going to be no sneaky, I'm giving you something for free when I want to try to sell you something at the end of the day. That's not how we roll. You can rest your mind at ease on that. But if you want to grow your network and you want to discuss this, and this is an important issue for you, I would welcome the opportunity to get on the phone with you. So go to my website, ecircleacademy.com/appointment. That's the link. And away we go.
Well, it sounds like in those free consulting calls, you're certainly honoring the legacy of your father, Napoleon, and really serving people in that. And what goes around comes around, and you intend to give it, and you'll get what you deserve in the end. And that's really a really nice way to do business that honors your father. So thanks again for being on.
Thanks, Nicky.
Rich, John, you gents are awesome, man. This was a really, really cool show. I'm pumped up and energized. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Rich, obviously this conversation took a lot of twists and turns, and where we started was pretty spirited in terms of, how should entrepreneurs really be expressing their views and expressing their values. And I really loved, I always love when the three of us, you, myself, and a guest, can get in a conversation where we're challenging each other. And I thought that was a really good position because I was able to, challenge Nicky a little bit. He's able to challenge me back on our views. And I guess the question I continue to have, and maybe a question I need to follow back up with Nicky on, is what does an entrepreneur do when they're purple? They're not on the left. They're not on the right. They agree with the expression of views. They agree on this, but they don't necessarily want to put themselves in a position where they're perceived as being on one side or the other. And I think that's the position I find myself in as I reflect upon our conversation. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are too outwardly on one side or the other potentially create cultural risk within their organization versus believing in what's right: freedom of expression, freedom of enterprise, freedom of values, and the values alignment to, hey, here are the 5 values that our organization has. We're going to live to these values more than maybe politics. And I think that's where I think I got a little crossed up in terms of, where do I sit on this conversation? I'm curious from your perspective. I love Nicky's perspective as well. Look, I'm black and white. This is what I'm suggesting to do. You gotta go this way. How do you view that on your end?
I feel like the safe place, and not that safe is the goal, but the safe place is to get clear on your own values. And I don't think it has to go to identifying for, are you on the left or right? Are you on the Republican or Democratic side? Or are you libertarian? Or I think that's where the labels get us in trouble. Versus there are just some philosophies and values of life that if you believe that they are indisputable, and maybe they are disputable for other people, the people they're disputable for, maybe you don't want to do business for. So I think instead of putting forward this political alignment, it's a putting forward unabashedly of what values you have. If they happen to line up, and you're saying, hey, what about somebody who's purple? So somebody who's right in the middle. If they happen to line up with a political side, fine. If they don't, fine. But get clear on our values and don't worry about expressing what they are, and don't work with other people who don't have them. That I feel like, there's a lot of energy I've got around just repeating that I think is Nicky's message.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's maybe the ground to where Nicky and I come together, right? Is freedom of expression, freedom of enterprise, and freedom to really commit to your values and express them and not work with anybody who doesn't align with them. That's probably the biggest message of all, is if you know who you are and what you stand for, if somebody comes around you, whether they be an employee, whether they be a customer or a partner that doesn't align with the values to which you're outwardly expressing, then move on. They shouldn't be a part of where you are. So,
I really like how you wrapped around, by the way, in the conversation to ask them about the bold messaging.
Yeah.
I wasn't tracking on those 3. I wasn't tracking linearly with it. My mind was somewhere else. And I love how you came back to, hey, we got something on the right mind. We got something on charging. What about the message? And I loved what he shared about the message. and really identifying with a pain point or a need of the customer, and not feeling like you have to put your solution forward, because your solution is going to get judged by people and they won't even come to you when you know you can help them. Just identify with their pain and their need. So thank you for wrapping back around to that. I don't think I would have done that.
Well, Rich, here's what I came to conclusion of. Obviously, number 1 was mindset, 2 was message, and 3 was charging the right amount. All of it really came down to a quote that Nicky threw out that I loved, which is, stop putting all the attention on yourself.
Yes.
Start putting the attention on the person to which needs a solution to their problem. As soon as you start doing that, your message will be geared the right way, and you should be charging appropriately for the solution that you're providing, so that you can get through that expectancy bias as well. That I love the way he framed that one. It all came down to me that when you're talking to an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this as well, and you're struggling with how people are going to perceive you, and I literally, Rich, was talking to somebody yesterday who is providing some financial services to companies. And she was talking about the fact that she's doing this for a lot of friends' companies, and she's concerned about charging them. And this exact conversation came up yesterday, but it was all about, well, I don't want them, I'm their friend. I don't know what they're going to think about it if I tell them this. It was the exact conversation we had. She was thinking about herself, not necessarily the value to which she can bring them with the solution. And so to me, that quote happens over and over and over again in coaching, with entrepreneurs, with employees. Stop putting the attention on yourself, put it on the message, the solution, and then charge appropriately for the solution you're providing. Just love the way Nicky framed that.
Agreed. I've got a quote that I highlighted from what I wrote down that Nicky said, what matters is, what are they dealing with? What is the effect of what they're dealing with? And then he ended that piece with, be curious about it. So don't rush to the answer or the solution or having to be helpful. Sometimes when we're just curious about it, that can be helpful in and of itself as somebody being listened to. We had a former guest who called themselves a golden ear. Yep. Just being curious about it and listening and finding out, are you in fact the person with the solution for their pain point? Because if you are, that'll just reveal itself. You don't need to be in a rush for it. The same way as how Nicky said, this free consulting call, he's not in a rush to get you to be a customer. He just wants to have a conversation and see if he can be of assistance.